Introducing Minor Wisdom Quintet.
1, 2, a skidda-didda-doo.
Minor Wisdom.
I tweeted something controversial. I'm so sorry, but I actually have quite a few people that agree with me. Anyway, this week is Alison Frost, and my podcast pimp, aka Stuart Savage, aka Savage, aka Stu Brew, aka Stewie Bear, but he has been kind of getting on me, not literally, figuratively, Matt, okay, about getting Alison Frost on the podcast, and I reached out to her not too long ago, and just because of emails getting lost in the fray, it became something that just got put on the back burner. But finally, I was like, I'm gonna get an interview with Alison if it kills me, and luckily I'm not dead, because I wouldn't have been able to do the intro or publish the podcast. But finally got to, quote unquote, sit down with Alison. We were both sitting, so I guess it's technically a sit down interview, but got to talk to Alison, and it was everything that Stuart said it would be. My podcast pimp comes through again, just again, not making money off of it. So I'm not sure when he will quit his job or muscle me into giving him a dime or two. But anyway, I had a great time interviewing Alison, and it was just a casual conversation, and it was really great. It was very similar. I keep saying, I apologize, but it was similar to when I interviewed Stuart, minus the sitting at a bar part, but I'm sure if I could have, Alison would have been fine with that, but that damn coronavirus. But anyway, so please enjoy this interview with Alison. Before I get to that, though, I did see Stuart this weekend because he had some sound issues, and I am not a sound guy, and his students were freaking amazing. But it was my first time to go to Carnegie Vanguard and see the space, and I don't know what everybody's complaining about. I don't know what he's complaining about, always complaining about, it's small, it's a small space. Yeah, it is, but it's a beautiful space. It's really cool. And so I was really impressed with Carnegie Vanguard's theater and all of the students and the knowledge of these kids, but they're putting on a show, and they wanted to record it and put it, record the sound to video. And since I'm a professional sound person now, having done a movie this past summer and doing this podcast, I would call myself a professional sound guy. So anyway, so I helped him, and also I'm in a show. I'm doing a staged reading. I am the middle-aged 40-year-old white man in a show about the Tulsa riots in the 20s, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it, even though my one note that I've been given by my director, Destiny Renee Miller, is that I sound too aggressive, and this is a problem I've had all my life. So if before Friday, any of you formerly aggressive speakers have any advice for somebody that is still struggling with the aggression in his voice, please reach out to me and tell me how I can be less aggressive sounding, please. It's also something my dad used to tell me all the time, like, you sound super aggressive. And I would always say, Dad, I'm not being, so, and my sister still says, it's just a problem I have, but I keep on trekking on. So if you have any advice on how to not sound so aggressive, I think it's Bob Singleton's fault, to be completely honest, because in high school, he taught us how to enunciate and how to speak with our diaphragm and do all this stuff aggressively. But I did it aggressively. It's not his fault. It's just I speak in a certain way now because of him. So that part is his fault as far as how I enunciate and have all my Lesac vowels very clear. So the tweet that I tweeted out, and I'll be brief about this, I said that UIL should not be competing this year. And let me clarify, they should not be competing this year. There should be no competition. Having a festival, if you want to, having some sort of homage to plays and doing shows, I think that is all fine and dandy without an audience. But the fact that people need to travel from spot to spot to spot, and you're not going to have your cast of characters that you would normally have because maybe parents won't let them act in a show, maybe they're just not face-to-face, all different types of elements, we shouldn't be doing it this year. That's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. I tweeted it. Quite a few respected directors also voiced their appreciation and their They backed it. I can't think of the English right now. English is not my first language. It is Hebrew. Thank you. Anyway, once again, I hope you enjoy this interview from Alison Frost. I made that sound desperate. This is a great interview, and Alison Frost is the greatest person alive. Enjoy.
I started teaching at Klein Forest High School in the fall of 1985. So I taught there for 5 years, and then I thought I was going to go teach overseas for a while.
Okay.
And Operation Desert Storm kind of put a halt to that.
Sure.
And I then was hired at Klein High School, which was also my alma mater. That's where I
Okay.
graduated from. And I was at Klein for almost 12 years. And I taught 1 year at Tomball High School. And so almost 20 years, not quite, but you know.
Had you had aspirations of moving to sort of the collegiate university level?
You know, that's kind of interesting. I, I recognize my age when I realized there really is a before and after the internet. And when I graduated from undergrad, I went to an undergrad that gave me an amazing education. I mean, an amazing education. And when I graduated, it was like, bye, see ya. There was no class. There was no emphasis on what you do after you graduate. So I actually went home, moved all my stuff, moved back home like college kids do, put an ad in the Houston Chronicle want ads for a Renaissance artist. Okay, never do that. The responses I got are beyond embarrassing. So surely that was not the way to get a job. And as luck would have it, my dad had somebody that was looking. Well, it was a communication gap. I thought I was going for an interview to be somebody that ran a corporate slide presentation studio.
Okay.
Where they're always doing, public long before PowerPoint. PowerPoint didn't exist.
Right.
And so literally slides in carousels. And I was like, oh, I can totally do that job. I got those skills. So I went for this interview, and the guy thought I was there to be a telemarketing specialist. And we both laughed and went, oh, ha, 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 ha. So here I am in downtown Houston, in Greenway Plaza, which is currently where the Church of Joel is.
Yeah. Fakewood Church is what I call it. But anyway, I shouldn't have said that. Anyway.
It's always the Church of Joel to me.
Yeah.
But in my heart of hearts, it's the Summit.
Yes.
Which used to be the premier concert going, basketball, whatever, stadium. So in my dress for success wool suit with my little pale yellow tie and my pristine high heels, I stumble over to the Summit, to the back door, knock, knock, knock. The guy lets me in, and I say, I'm a technician, although I didn't look like one.
Yeah.
And so I walked in and I met this guy, and he introduced me, and he worked for a company that was in charge of doing all the video work for the Summit. He gave me a tour. I walked around the studio, and I say, thank you very much. And then I stumble back to my car in my high heels, probably with blisters. And then I get home, and I pull out the Houston Chronicle, and I look to see what's coming to the Summit next. No internet, right? So I'm literally having to look through the newspaper. And Sesame Street Live is on its way. And so I have his card, and I call him, and I say, Tim, can I come hang out during Sesame Street Live and just watch what you guys do? And he goes, we're actually not working Sesame Street Live, but he said, can you pull cable? I was like, sure. He's like, all right, I got a job for you. You're going to work the Cars concert. Okay, child of the 80s, the
Right.
Cars was my favorite band.
Right.
So my first gig out of undergrad was pulling cable for the Cars, and they were being filmed for HBO
Wow.
or MTV, one of the two.
Yeah.
So I hang up from him, and I'm like, yes, I got a job. And then I call my old tech director and I say, do you know what it means to pull cable? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I totally lied. So I get to the summit, and I tell, and back in the day, this is what a cable puller does. Cameraman has camera on his shoulder, and he's tied to some tethered
Yep.
outlet somewhere. It's the cable puller's job to make sure he doesn't get hung up on
Right.
things, that people don't step on it, so that this $25,000 camera doesn't go flying off his shoulders. I cable pulled for 3 years. I worked concerts, I worked basketball games, I worked baseball and football, and I got to know the Rocket players intimately because I sat at their feet every night. I was always on the cameraman that would go out and shoot the free throws. So
That's fun.
that was my first real gig. And I did that while I also went, I mean, didn't pay enough to live on.
Right.
So I answered an ad that was in the Houston Chronicle for the Alley Theater, and they were looking for somebody who worked in the box office. I'd never worked in the box office a day in my undergrad. I was always backstage. I never worked front of house, but I learned a new skill, and I worked in the box office, and then I would volunteer. One of the leading, he's not a playwright, although I think he has written plays. Michael Bigelow Dixon helped make the Humana Festival what it was.
Okay.
And the Alley Theater had him for a brief shining moment where they were trying to do at the Alley what the Humana Festival has become in Louisville. And I used to read plays for Michael, $10 a play. I would bring my wrench, because in my undergrad I was a directing design major, so I had lots of tech experience. I worked the box office at the Alley, and then volunteered to help light focuses and all that kind of stuff. Worked there, and had just accepted a position to be an assistant stage manager backstage when the gig at Klein Forest happened. And that was a funny interview because I had interviewed with the department head, Steve Bradley, for the job. He had interviewed 2 other women, so we called ourselves Bradley's Angels. But I didn't know I had the job. Nobody confirmed that I'd been hired. Because I lived in Klein School District, I knew when the first day of in-service was going to be. So
Right.
I showed up and went to the front office, and thankfully my name had been put on a mailbox, and that's how I knew I had my first
Wow.
teaching gig.
Wow. Was anything in the mailbox? Like, was there a free shirt or something, or?
I don't remember.
So we
I
we
really
have
don't.
we have very similar parallels, because I my first gig, it was at a high school, not college, was at Fitzgerald's, and I was the lighting guy at Fitzgerald's, and I worked. The first show was the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, and now you said, I was born in the '80s. I don't mean to do that to you, but
That's okay.
my music love is the '90s, and
Yeah.
so the Mighty Mighty Bosstones, to me, I was like, oh my gosh. And mind you, I had like 8 Parkans and 2 Fresnels, and so I'm just sitting there pressing a button, on rhythm, which luckily I knew the music,
Yeah.
but also the cable pulling thing. So that's kind of funny, because that's a job that I've never done that, but it's one of those jobs that's always been offered to me because I've always been a technician.
Yeah.
I've just never done. I see those people just rapping.
Nowadays I don't think there is much in demand
Not
anymore,
as
but
much.
so many of those cameras are wireless now.
Yeah, not as much. I will say, and most people that are fans of this podcast know this. I'm an outed wrestling fan. So in the WWE, those
Uh-huh.
cameras are all still tethered, and so they all have cable pullers.
Oh,
And I don't know why. I don't know if it's like a better signal or more reliable signal or what,
yeah.
but
I, that's I worked not wrestling. I may have worked one wrestling gig, but I tell you, I remember working the boxing matches,
mhm.
and nothing will get those people riled up more, because those people in the front seats at the boxing
You get in
matches
their
are paid
way.
a lot of money, and you put a cameraman and a cable puller in front of them,
Yeah.
and they kept trying to pull me off the platform,
Yeah.
and then some guy'd get punched, and I'd go home and my shirt would be covered in blood.
Wow.
And my mom was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah, I just worked a boxing match. It's all right."
Yeah. Who did you murder tonight? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So why did you, what happened? You kind of quickly went into it, but why did you end up transitioning to education?
I knew in my heart of hearts that that was going to be my dream job.
Okay.
I knew when I was growing up in my formative years. I spent every summer at a YMCA summer camp, and I started out as a camper
Yeah.
and worked my way up. One summer, I was assistant camp director because I actually wasn't going to go to camp that work camp that summer, and then things fell through, and they said, "Yeah, come on, we've got a place for you." But I spent many summers at this YMCA camp, which is one of the reasons why I love our camp on the coast so much. It's my favorite activity that we do on our campus.
Are you an
Um,
athlete? Or were,
Not at
or
all.
okay. So
No,
what were you
no.
doing? What was I wasn't a YMCA kid. I was a Jewish community center camper. So I had a different experience.
Well, it was a full on, they had zip lines and riflery and water
Okay.
skiing and archery and hiking and camping out. And there was one summer where they said, "We're so tired of skit night and seeing the same old skits. Allison, you're the theater person. You're going to prepare skit night from now on." So I became their kind of bona fide
Producer.
producer of shows.
Yeah.
And my last summer there, I worked all summer. There were 5 sessions at the camp, and there were these two boys. One of them who was really a lover of theater and performing. They would come to camp like 4 or 5 sessions. So I cast Brian in session 1, and I said, "You're going to do this in session 5." And I did a full-on production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yeah.
And I had a camper played Joseph in Act 1, and a counselor played adult Joseph in Act 2 when he's going to have
Right.
sex with Potiphar's wife and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't have,
Spoiler alert, by the way. Jeez. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I was just, I choreographed, I found music, I rewrote songs. I do remember the youngest boys' cabin 1. They went out into the woods and they found their own little cane, and in their crafts class they made hats, and we just did this, like, "I'm getting married in the morning."
Where
I did Broadway at this YMCA camp in Oklahoma.
yeah, where were the shows? Was there like
They had an air conditioned chapel.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's where I did it.
Wow. It's an appropriate show, I guess, then if it's in a chapel. So,
Yeah.
yeah, can't do Rent. Although that you wouldn't have been doing Rent then, but
Oh no.
still,
But
yeah.
I did, my freshman year in college, we did a Western musical, and the lead female runs a saloon. And I took one of those numbers and adapted it for a cabin full of girls. That was the first pushback I ever got. Like, "Why are you having these girls playing these saloon girls?"
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
"Whatever,
It's theater.
it is."
Have you you mentioned that um your transition from college into the real world was just kind of like throw you out into the ocean. Have
Yeah.
you at Texas A&M Corpus Christi, have you implemented some sort of like
Oh my gosh.
reality
Yeah.
class kind of thing?
Yeah. I'm teaching one now called Senior Seminar. And I just emailed my students, as a matter of fact, because of the COVID testing. We're going to have to do their presentations on WebEx
Yeah.
tomorrow. But they're doing a 5-minute presentation where they have to talk about themselves and their art to
Right.
a committee of people. So we have a senior seminar class that's designed to help them get ready to promote themselves as artists when they graduate. I teach an audition prep class, which is like an actor toolbox class of here's how you pound the pavement, here's what you're going to have to do, these are resources, these are all the kinds of things you're going to confront. And then, basically, here's all the tools. I hope you put them to use when you get out there.
Right.
And then our technicians have a portfolio class.
Right.
So yeah,
That's good.
it's infinitely better designed. I'm not gonna say better design. I really did get an amazing education. And they have, even that university has amended what didn't
Sure.
happen
Yeah.
back in the 80s. So
I would hope so. Yeah.
they have. They have.
Do you find that the kids are more prepared for college than they are for college to real world?
I have a current student right now who, for 4 years, I think he's known exactly wanted to do what he wanted to do the day he graduates. And he's been working and banking money and saving for his new life in Chicago. I think he's going to do fine.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be great. And then there are some that, they start out thinking one thing, and in 4 years of study, they go a different direction. I was the same way. I went to a junior college first, and then
Okay.
transferred to a 4-year school. And I got a scholarship with a set design that I submitted, and I went in as a technician. While I was there, I became the master electrician for my entire sophomore year, and we installed a light board even.
Right.
And then when I transferred, I I was I was thrilled at the idea of becoming a scene painter. That one of the faculty members painted this set that I went to go see their show, and this is gorgeous marble. I didn't know you could even paint marble. I just had no clue about the scene design stuff, and so thought I was going to be a scene painter. And then I took a directing class, and everything changed.
Yeah.
And my love and appreciation for all aspects of theater they just landed in that class, and I
Right.
never looked back.
Is
I've done a lot of scene painting. I've hung a lot of lights.
Right.
My first 5 years teaching at Klein Forest, I was the technical director. So I did most of the designing and tech work there with an amazing group of students that I'm still very close to.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever act? I mean, were you ever on stage?
That's gonna be the part you want to edit out. I'm infinitely better at crafting a performance than someone else.
That's
than I
fine.
am and getting myself to do it. But I will tell you, when I was auditioning for graduate school to get my MFA, I had to prepare an acting audition,
Right.
even as a director for one of the schools. So a couple of months ago, one of my colleagues is directing Lauren Gunderson's Book of Will on Zoom. And at the very end of the play, you see all these proof of the years of Shakespeare's words being recited over and over, whatever. So she got about 30 people to perform bits of Shakespeare
Sure.
that they all kind of merged and blended together at the end of the Zoom play. And I did perform a Shakespeare monologue for that.
And
Well, luckily you don't have to see all of it. You can just see a small snippet of it.
Yeah.
But it was fine. It was fine. I used the same monologue that I had used to go to grad school. It's a really good one.
I'm currently doing a staged reading. We're going to be doing it at an outdoor venue in a week from tomorrow. And one of the things that we've talked about in rehearsal is this will still be, because it's being recorded, this will still be out there once COVID is done. So it can't be embarrassing. Like, we have to still be good, because all this content we're now creating is going to be in the cloud somewhere. So, don't screw it up, which is kind of funny because, it's the same thing. I started as an actor, but I have fully embraced the technician and designer side.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was the mother bunny in third grade, and there's a great picture of me somewhere on the internet
Yeah,
dressed up like little Swiss Miss doing some kind of wooden clog dance for something. So
sure.
when you're little, that's all you can do.
I don't remember what I
Um,
did in third grade, but
well, I have been so fortunate that at every stage of my life, at every school I've ever been to, I have found the right mentor
sure.
to give me what I needed. And my elementary school had uh, a music and speech teacher. That's what they called it at the time.
Yep.
And she'd do plays in class. I played Becky Thatcher and Tom Sawyer. Had my first stage kiss in my speech. I think it was probably a peck on the cheek, but
Sure.
you know. But she directed a play for every season with a different grade from the
Yep.
school. So the third graders did Easter and the sixth graders did Christmas. And I mean, she just didn't stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine.
And so I had an outlet in elementary school. And then, oh, worst time of my life. Um, but for all the reasons I'm going to say it was the worst time of my life, it has made my life infinitely better. But in the summer between seventh and eighth grade, my dad said, "Hey kids, we're going to move to New Jersey." Okay, we'd been living in, I'm a fourth generation Texan,
Right.
and we'd been living in Oklahoma. So crossing that Mason-Dixon line
Right.
was a bit of an education for this little Oklahoma girl. And uh, I was miserable.
Yeah.
The two elementary schools in this small New Jersey town joined in seventh grade, and I moved there in eighth grade. So I felt like cousin It. They all had these short Dorothy Hamill haircuts. She was a figure skater. It
Yeah.
was very
Yeah.
popular at the time.
Yeah.
Wore straight leg corduroys and deck shoes, what we call Sperry's now, I guess. And I show up with hair below my butt and bell bottom blue jeans and red and white cheerleading shoes.
Yeah.
And, you know, within a month, I was talking like I'd lived there. I adapted my vocals to sound like I was from New Jersey.
Right.
I went straight to the beauty shop and got a haircut. My mom had to take me to the mall to go shopping. And it was my English teacher who was directing Annie Get Your Gun and said, "You better audition. I have a part for you." And that really kind of saved the rest of my time in New Jersey
Right.
because it gave me an instant family.
And also, they knew your accent was fake and what accent you really had. They're like, she'd be
You know
great.
and what was funny is um, when we moved back to Texas, right before my junior year, my dad said, "Okay, we're done. We're done here. We're
Yeah.
moving back to Texas. We're going to Houston." And we were like, "Yes!" And so for about the first couple of weeks,
You were from New Jersey.
I still talked like I was,
Yeah.
and then eventually I just let it fade away.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Jersey Shore? I know it's a horrible question to ask somebody
No,
of your stature. Okay. I was just
no.
one. I never watched it too. I mean, I know, we all know the characters from it because of social media and public,
Yeah,
but I was just wondering if there's
I'm sure they're all real.
well, that's what I was getting to is there anything that you think could have come from that show that was actually authentic? Because we know the majority of it was not, but
Uh-huh.
I guess the accents were.
Well,
mm,
and where I lived is that part of New Jersey. I mean, my mother did it right. Every time we had to move as a family, the first thing she did was find the best school system.
Sure.
So, um, where we lived, all the kids there were being prepped for Princeton, Harvard,
Right.
Yale. They were all being prepped for Ivy League, and um, I just wanted to do theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't care. It didn't matter to me if I wasn't going to get a field hockey scholarship
Right.
to
Right.
Princeton.
Right. Yeah. It's like I can only take so much of this these sports that aren't even on TV, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh
And we did one musical a year there. We
okay.
did Brigadoon my freshman year and Fiddler on the Roof. Oh no, I think I reversed that. I think Fiddler on the Roof was my first year,
Sure.
and Brigadoon was my second year.
I'll
Something like that.
get my fact checking team on that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
sure.
So
You know,
speak.
I took a student. Um, I took a student to. She was a presidential scholar one
Okay.
summer,
Yep.
and while we were in Washington, uh, I was fairly close with her family, and so we just kind of made this deal, and we rented a car and drove to Carnegie Mellon, where she was
Yep.
going to go to college. And then we left Carnegie Mellon and drove to Staten Island and stayed with her aunt and uncle and just did some visiting or
Right.
whatever before we flew back to Texas. And I took the rental car and a map, no GPS, and went and found my old neighborhood and went back and found that old school. And sure enough, I found a door that was open and I went inside. I was just it was unreal.
Right. That is, yeah, that is, it's the memories start flooding back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that,
Well, and when I first got hired at
yeah.
Klein, which is where I had graduated from, um, it didn't feel the same. It didn't really look the same. It smelled the same because it was a really old building.
Yeah.
And then I was coming down from the catwalk on, ladder, and I had forgotten that if you came down with your butt sticking out, you'd hit the air conditioner.
Sure.
So you had to suck your butt. And I was coming down one, and I remembered, that's why I had that pair of jeans with the hole in it all that.
Yeah.
Because I remember in high school, I had come down and I ripped my jeans. They got caught on the, I didn't suck my butt in far enough. And so sure enough, I was coming down that ladder and went, I forgot about that. I'll never forget it again.
That sounds like a horrible idea for a theater shirt. Suck your butt in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who was the president when you went up there with the presidential scholar? Was it Clinton or Bush or?
Clinton.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. It was Clinton.
Yeah, I graduated high school in 2000, and it was HSPVA, and so a couple of friends. One is still a very very close friend of mine. She was a presidential scholar that year and got to
Yeah.
meet Bill Clinton. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right before he left. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Got to walk on the, uh, I think at the time I was also a runner, a jogger,
right,
not really a runner, but, and I remember walking on the jogging track that he had installed in the Rose Garden, which is where we were meeting.
right.
And I was like, oh, I could run so many miles. It was like the perfect texture. It was awesome.
You have to have a McDonald's burger though, because I
Yeah,
think
sure.
that's always what he always had, one of those, and then would go run or something. But or
Uh-huh.
maybe it's the other way around. But yeah, yeah. What is I have a question about your comparison to high school and college again, and I don't mean to keep going back to this, but this is more
That's okay.
fun. But is there a production that you did as a teacher, as a director in high school that you would love to remount with college kids? And even the fact that, because I know in colleges you can even recruit outside and get people to audition that aren't necessarily at the college. You need a 70-year-old man, you can go get a 70-year-old man, that kind of thing, where you can't do that in high school.
Yeah.
Is there something that you think that you would love to just re-explore?
I don't think I've ever worked so hard on a show as I did Crazy for You.
Okay.
Um, and it was huge. Um, it, I mean, half the people in it are, members of the Screen Actors Guild now and doing very well for
Yeah.
themselves. But that's probably the hardest I've ever had to work. And it might be fun to do that show again in a space that could support it.
Right. Right.
Because our stage space, I mean, it was, and I can remember uh we the show wound up doing so well, we added an extra performance at the end and didn't even have to advertise it. Everybody just bought tickets because they'd already seen it already.
Right.
So it was a huge seller for us and made us a ton of money. which I turned around and spent on her when I played
Sure.
ring.
Yeah.
So, that's why we had gorgeous crinoline costumes and gorgeous, scenery and drapes and all the whole
Did
nine yards
you
because
did
that musical had done so well.
did you build a car?
No,
Okay.
no, we found a way to do the number without the car
Okay.
because there wasn't any place to put the car.
Oh, okay.
Um, but yeah, that show was infinitely difficult. And I remember my mother and one of her cousins were at our final dress. I had like 30 pages of notes. I'm giving notes until midnight.
Yeah.
And my mom, before she left, she goes, Mike and I are going to leave, but you can't open tomorrow.
That was her note.
That was my mother's note. You can't open tomorrow. But you know what? That's just makes everybody work harder,
Yeah.
and they do. But one of my uh, students at the time, who's still a friend on Facebook, anyway, family friend. He was going down the hallway one day, and we always had to rehearse over Christmas
Right.
when
Right.
we did our musicals,
Yeah.
so that we could finish before the orchestra had to go do TMEA. So we were rehearsing over Christmas, and he's going down, and he's exhausted. He also was like a running back for the football team or something. I don't know. He was something and was a great football player. And he's coming down the hallway. He goes, if would have done Oklahoma would be done by now, because that show is just really,
Yeah.
really big.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's true. Oh, Oklahoma's no sneeze or anything, but yeah,
yeah.
sure.
And then I hired two of the people from that production that were in Crazy for You.
Mhm.
After they had graduated from college, they came back years later and both choreographed a production I was working on of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And that show doesn't even need a director. It needs somebody to help form the concept, but
Yeah.
it really just needs a choreographer and a music director.
Yeah.
There's very little for me to do but go, yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Maybe he should exit over there.
Yeah.
But holy cow, our last night, there were somebody came to me in the or in the drama room and said, they're scalping tickets in the lobby. They're going for $50. Okay.
That's yeah. No big
No.
deal to me. Yeah.
Big seller.
Just don't tell MTI or whoever is, yeah. Is there a moment, or was it day one that your parents understood the magnitude of theater for you?
Oh, I don't know at what time my mother, probably my mother was getting the hint when she said, I'm not taking you to see Chitty Chitty Bang Bang anymore.
Okay.
Because that was the closest thing I had to theater.
Right.
Was if there was a musical, like I saw the Lucille Ball movie version of Mame like 8 times. And I'll tell you a funny story. I do remember my mother dropping me. This was in Tulsa, so I had to have been 6th grade. My mother dropped me off at the movie theater, and she goes, "What are you?" She goes, "Are you seeing Mame again?" And I said, "No, I think I'm going to see this thing. I don't know what it's about. It's called Pink Floyd." And it was a documentary on Pink Floyd, and I kept waiting for the movie to start.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought the name of it sounded fun.
Yeah.
And so finally I remember them sitting in a tent, getting stoned with like kettle drums and whatever. And I was like, I think I'm going to go catch Mame. And I went and snuck over to the
This isn't the sequel to Pink Panther. What is this?
not.
Yeah.
But for most, until I got into that elementary school where I really I was immersed in theater.
Right.
My mom figured it out. My dad, and unfortunately for my dad, neither my brother nor my sister, we all did high school theater.
Right.
They followed in my footsteps. Nobody played football. Nobody played baseball.
Yeah.
Things that my dad would have understood.
Yeah.
And of course, my sister was a senior my first year to teach at Klein Forest. So she was a senior at Klein Forest. She's one of the best stage managers I ever had. And she stage managed our one-act play that year. And boy, howdy, my dad was like, Dad gummit, I thought I was done with high school theater, but you're going to work in one? Ugh.
Yeah.
So for a lot of the times, if we were doing a show that I thought my dad would really like, my mom would bring him along. Otherwise, sometimes I'd just say, just drive up to the theater and let me show you the set I built.
Right.
Let me show you the set I painted. You can
Is
see the
there
work. You
is
don't have
there
to watch the play.
is there anything that you sacrificed for your interest as far as like what you did not like necessarily for your dad? Does that make sense? Like, was there something you did for your dad that wasn't necessarily something you were like hyped about? Maybe go to an event that he wanted to go to, or
Oh,
you know what I mean?
well, the fact that my dad didn't necessarily like high school theater, he didn't like the alley either.
So,
Uh,
yeah,
the alley did back in the 70s. They hired Robert Simons to do George Bernard Shaw's Don Juan in Hell, I think. I think that about killed my father, and my mom was never going to get him because
back, yeah,
they were like part of the six couple. Let's all get subscriptions and
sure,
let's go. Um, so he didn't like that either. But he worked for the phone company his whole life, and part of their job in the corporate world was to donate yourself as a board member somewhere for some
yeah,
nonprofit.
sure.
My dad became chairman of the board of Houston Ballet,
Okay,
and he went to the ballet and loved it.
yeah,
He was always a fan of classical music. He didn't go, oh, Bach or
yeah,
whatever. He just liked big sound, and he always had big hi-fi speakers. He had the best. We always had one of the scariest houses at Halloween because he'd make these recordings and
sure,
put pantyhose over his face and scare people. But he was very big into hi-fi and big music and things like that. So he loved the ballet. He goes, it's like the athletics of the Olympics. It's got the music of the symphony, and it has the story of the theater. That was his idea of a good time.
sure. So,
I I just don't think he ever saw really good theater. You know, I Hamilton might not have been up his alley, but there's other things that are out there that he loved the Sound of Music,
right,
because I remember that was an argument one time. We'd gone out as a family to go eat pizza, and I said, Sound of Music starts at 7 o'clock, let's go. My dad said at 7:05, we've missed the best part. The best part was the scenery and the opening
yeah, the
credits.
first part
So
of it. That's pretty funny. So at least he was appreciated the arts, though. It
he
wasn't
did.
like he just poo-pooed it or something. So
No,
yeah,
but he to know my dad is to know a fishing rod.
okay,
That
okay,
was his passion.
okay,
His favorite thing was to go get on his boat in the
right.
middle of nowhere and drink beer and fish.
Yeah, I don't hate that. Yeah,
No. And my passion since is gardening.
okay.
And
I
I
can
think it's
tell. I
it's
mean, it's
it's
not a
part of
visual podcast, but the clear, what you see behind you it tells me that you have a green thumb.
yeah, but I think it's part of the yin and the yang. I spent half my life in a dark theater with no
Right.
windows, and you got to come out into the sunshine. And Kelly Russell and I both share the same doctor, and he's given us both the same advice: get out of the theater and get into the sunshine.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need some vitamin D.
Yeah. That's good advice. I think I
Yeah.
mean, you can tell how pale I am on screen. But so speaking of your green thumb, then, because my wife is a green thumber, and so I've dug way too many trenches and done too much of that. Like I've never done it before, but I've got to say it is very satisfying and gratifying to grow something and
Yeah.
then have a result.
Yeah.
And it's also on the flip side, it's very disappointing when you think you're growing something and
It's disappointing when you pay $10 for a flat of something, you put them in the dirt and they all die.
yeah, yeah.
And I
Where
don't blame myself then. I say there's something wrong with what I bought.
where have you had a harder time to grow things?
Uh, well, I've had to adjust.
Yeah.
We had a 30-year-old Norfolk pine in this backyard that we cut down less than a year ago.
Okay.
So we've gone from shady backyard to sunny backyard.
Yeah.
So I've gone from planting impatiens to petunias.
Okay.
So I just I don't really think I'm not a landscaper.
Right.
I just like to put color where color's going to grow.
Right.
And um, it's, my best friend in England had a picture of her garden in some gardening magazine,
Right.
and it was stunning. And she goes, "Oh, darling, they wanted to know where I special ordered everything from, and I told them I got it at the grocery store." You know,
What's
I'm
the
the same.
what?
I'll buy a plant at HEB.
Yeah.
There are a couple of landscapers in Corpus that I try to support before I go to the big chains.
Right. Yeah. What is like? I see a bunch of stuff behind you. Is a lot of that stuff store bought, or and you just keep it going, or is it?
Yeah,
You,
and if I get, I'm kind of I
feel
hard
free.
to
Yeah.
point to, but I do have we have a prayer plant
Okay.
and two things that belong to my wife's grandparents.
Okay.
The prayer plant was a gift when her grandfather died, and that's probably 20 years ago.
Right.
It's still alive.
Right.
I just keep splintering it off and putting it in other things so it won't die out. And then her grandmother had some fern, and
Okay.
some of that fern, as long as it gets water, you can't kill it.
No. No.
So
Yeah.
I'm a little uh, soft-hearted about trying to maintain those. She could care less.
Right.
I mean, she likes the prayer plant.
Yeah. I
If the fern goes, it's fine.
again we're meeting at the same level here because my
Yeah.
mother passed away in 2006, and she was not a gardener, but she had kind of this display of plants smaller than what you have, but it was probably 8 plants, and so my sister was trying her darndest just to keep them alive because she, it's one of those weird psychological things that this is keeping our mom alive, right? So it's not weird. I shouldn't say it's weird, but it's just it's a coping mechanism. And then when I met my wife, my sister was like, "Take these," because she was more of a green thumb, and so I think we still have a couple that are living on, 14
Yeah.
years later. So I
Yeah.
totally.
I have some mums that are at least 7 years old.
Uh,
They just come back every year,
Yeah.
and they've changed colors. So they started out that kind of rust-colored mum that you
Yeah.
can get, and they're bright yellow now.
Okay.
That's
That's
not how they
fun.
started.
This is why I do this podcast. It not who cares about the theater stuff. I want
Yeah,
to
right?
know, yeah, I want to know about the real Alison Frost. So,
Gardening, Valley Throw.
yeah. So, I want to wrap up. Don't want to
Better
keep
that than baking, let me just say.
better that
I
than
tried to
baking.
make a pie the other day.
Oh,
I just threw the whole thing in the trash and didn't let anybody taste it.
but can you cook?
I can cook.
See,
I can't bake.
right. That's the difference between patience and impatience. I mean, it's baking. You have to level things off, and if it says a cup, it's got to be a cup.
Yeah.
Cooking, you just pour it on, and it
But I
looks
am
right.
one of those people. Truly, my wife, my sister, and my mother can open the refrigerator door and see a meal. I open the refrigerator door and go, okay, there's a bag of lettuce. I guess
Yeah.
I'll have that. I don't see recipes.
Right.
I don't live that
Do
way.
you watch
Oh, I'll eat
Chopped?
this cold can of green beans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you watch Chopped? Have you
Uh,
ever seen it?
I have seen
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Our family's a real big fan of Patty's Mexican Table.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. All
That
right.
one plays a lot.
Yeah, you sound like somebody that would be horrible at Chopped, but it would be fun to watch you do it.
Oh yeah,
Like,
no.
yeah. Okay.
No.
All right. So, we've had
Although
fun.
I'll be more than happy to sit on the other end
Right.
and taste
it.
everything they
Right.
make.
Sure. Yeah, you'll be a judge. It's just a matter of, yeah, you're not going to be able to tell them how to make it better. Right.
No.
Yeah.
Not in a million years would I want to lessen the impact that my college education has afforded the students that I have now
Sure.
and the alumni that I have. So I do think that maturity and time is a great educator. So I don't know that I taught any differently when I taught high school than I do um, at the collegiate level. I mean, yes, I can elevate
Sure.
expectations, um, but I'm a big believer that the hardest part of theater is being a good collaborator. And I'm always looking for ways to get students to experience collaboration, because the more you do it, the better you get, and you figure out how to work with other people. But I will tell you right now, I had a nice little, as my mother would call it, a come to Jesus meeting with some of my seniors the other day. And I don't want to blame COVID. COVID may be a part of it, because right now everything in the world feels differently, and how we're getting through school, like you had said, virtually, not virtually, some face to face, some not face to face. I overheard a student say the other day, I didn't do anything yesterday and I'm exhausted. So the whole idea of I didn't do anything, if they're doing less because they're doing it online,
Right.
that bothers me, because as an artist, I want my students to stay curious about what it is we do and what it is we create.
Right.
Um, I think sometimes with this particular generation, and I'm sure it's seen at the high school level as well, iPhones and instant wiki answers, I think it's dampened our curiosity, because you get an immediate answer and then you move on,
Yeah.
instead of going, but what about this? But also, what about this? What if I look at this one thing from this direction, this direction, this direction, and this direction? How can I approach this? And I think I'm 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 starting a curiosity campaign on my campus, because I think our students need to reinvest re reinvestigate what that is. And I'm not so certain that the pandemic that we're in right now has kind of dulled everybody's
Yeah.
senses a little bit, and I don't want it to.
Yeah.
Minor wisdom.